Right, let's talk further then on this. Joining us for more is history lecturer at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, Mr. Kuthula Thwala. Mr. Thwala, thanks so very much for availing yourself to SABC News. We appreciate your time, sir.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Good evening to the viewers.
You're most welcome, sir. Let's start with your reaction then to the Gauteng High Court in Pretoria setting aside King Misuzulu KaZwelithi's recognition by President Cyril Ramaphosa.
Well, this speaks to the fact that, as we have already indicated before, that the issue of wranglings over the succession in the Zulu Throne is nothing new and it is nothing uncommon. It's only that in the 21st century it placed itself in the court of law. That is why one is aware of the fact that way back in 1840 there was a battle of Makongu, and in 1856 on the 2nd of December there was a battle of Ndondaksuga. It was still the issue of the succession. But specifically to the decision today, we are pleased to read that Judge Davis had made himself very clear to say then that the decision does not seek to suggest that there is somebody other than the king whose decision has been set aside today. But it's an issue of the procedures, which is the customary law.
Yeah.
So it's an issue of the procedure according to the findings of the court more than anything.
All right, but you know, I just want to, sorry to interject there, but you know, you talk about the fact, and I don't want to lose this point, you're talking about the fact that this is playing itself out within the courts. And even though we are talking about customary law, would the Zulu Nation want, you know, the throne decided through, you know, court process? Would that be desirable?
Definitely, to the majority of the Zulu people, who most of whom are just not aware of the issues that pertains to the issues of the courts and so forth. I think it just eats away what is mighty Zulu Kingdom, which is arguably one of the biggest kingdoms in Africa with its rich history. So it's not in the interest of ordinary Zulu people who might not be aware of the legal issues, but we have to follow the laws in the 21st century since we are a constitutional democracy in South Africa in the current scheme of things.
Yeah. And does it seem to you, though, that there is some sort of a clash between culture and law? Would it be fair to say that, you know, we find ourselves at odds with what is essentially customary law and, you know, whether we want to call it Roman Dutch law, whatever law that we are practicing in South Africa? Will that clash play itself out in this particular case in a very big way?
Yes, there's definitely a clash between African ways and the imported ways of running our own things, particularly the kingdoms as exemplified by the Zulu Kingdom. So for me, it's an example of how unwell the European laws, if I may use that, if I may be allowed to borrow that terms, or foreign laws are used to determine African ways of doing things, particularly when they decide matters of such importance. But then you ask yourself about the customary law issues, because submitting the name of Prince King Misuzulu to the president was done by the then sitting Prime Minister, the late Chief Mangosuthu Buthelezi.
Yeah.
The very same person who was there as far back as during the 1950s when King Cyprian Zulu ascended the throne, and then King Goodwill Zwelithin after the long regency of Prince Simakade. So you just tend to ask a question: where was the customary law when those things happened? Were we misled by the very same person who was so much trusted in doing justice in terms of protecting the image of the Zulu Kingdom? I don't want to be drawn into politics, and yeah, I fully agree that the Zulu Kingdom should be, the royal house should be allowed to deal with the matter, but they must have it in their minds that the Amazulu people are waiting eagerly and they want to maintain their status to be the biggest kingdom in Africa. And our prayer is that things be handled smoothly and peacefully, because there are possibilities for things to spill out of context and gaps to be opened for political opportunism.
Yeah, I obviously don't want to throw you into a terrain that you've obviously just mentioned you don't necessarily want to get into. But since it was you who mentioned Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, you'll answer as much as you can on my next question. But, how did Prince Mangosuthu get it wrong? A lot has been spoken about with regards to the 14th of May 2021 meeting and, whether it was constituted improperly or not. And there were questions about, what must happen for it to be constituted legally and who must be there. But, given the fact, and I think you kind of spoke a little bit on that, given the fact that Mangosuthu Buthelezi was at the forefront of this process that made Misuzulu ascend to the throne, how did he not know how to constitute that meeting of the 14th of May 2021 when, as you say, he was trusted to and people believed with so many years, within dealing with these kinds of things that, it would have been the right thing and everything would have been done properly. I mean, it's important that we touch on this.
Well, as I say, that it puzzles many people. How did it all happen? We are aware about the wranglings and so forth, but things were handled smoothly. There was before even Prince Cyril Ramaphosa took over. There was a regency of Prince Mshian, but then people trusted that all went well. We are not saying those who are saying that there has been some flaws in the way things were constituted coming to this decision, which happened during the life tenure of Chief Buthelezi himself. We are not saying somebody is wrong, but we are just saying that it's unprecedented, but also very sad when you followed the issue of succession within the Zulu kingdom. Today we are speaking about the monarchy that needs to champion the programs of development and ensuring that Amazulu are active participants in the modern ways of doing things in our modern times.
Yeah. Mr. Thwala, just in closing, the fact that there is this dispute and the fact that, the courts didn't say they stand by, what the president's decision to issue the certificate to Misuzulu does point to the fact that perhaps Prince Simakade does indeed have a case. Otherwise, it would have just been thrown out and, what's done is done. But what's important is to ask, what leg does he have to stand on? I mean, we obviously understand on the side of King Misuzulu why he was the one to ascend to the throne, but what is the case in terms of Simakade? What leg does he have to stand on?
Well, if the law says Princess Simakade is correct in terms of the procedural flaws, I think that says it all. It means it's a question of going back to the drawing board. We might wake up after the rerun of the processes, still have King Misuzulu ascending the throne. So it is also a lesson even to the president to examine. I guess the president here was only having hopes that I've just explained to you in terms of things being submitted to him by the late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. He trusted everything, but then it's a lesson to say then that he should have exhausted all other means to satisfy himself that the customary law was followed aptly.
All right, Mr. Thwala, we appreciate your time here on SABC News. Thank you so very much for your input. That's Kuthula Thwala, representing the University of KZN, where he is a historian.